for dangerous, repair, restore to sound condition. So if you look at all the definitions, there's plenty of them there that would cover everything you're talking about.
Okay, I just want to make sure that it's covered. The definition of a motor vehicle, do we really want to say self-propelled or containing a motor or something? There are things that are self-propelled that are not motorized. I'm thinking in particular something like a tricycle. I'm just being nitpicking here because
I don't think anybody's
we
going to
get
make
into
that
these
leap
areas.
from a tricycle to a motor vehicle.
I'm just pointing it out that it's not particularly clear the way it's worded, because we do get into these things eventually. And
I don't see it.
can we just say, instead of self-propelled, a motorized wheeled conveyance?
Mr. Purkeypile.
Yeah.
It says, number 8, motor vehicle. So,
Yeah, but
We're
then the colon, and then it goes on to define motor vehicle
such
as
as
a
a car
self-propelled.
or truck. So there's a definition. It's pretty,
Okay,
it's not people
car or
powered.
truck that doesn't run on rails. Well, okay, if you want to keep it that way. I'm just, let's make it clear English. On non-use, is there a timeline for that? How long it has to be not used before we can consider it an unused thing?
Yes, ma'am. It's in the various places, 10 days, and there's different points if it's a building or if it is weeds or trash. In the body of it, there is time frames.
Okay, so anything that sits in your front yard for 10 days and hasn't been used is considered a non-use and subject to a fine?
Weeds and everything, you're given written notice that they have 10 days to correct it. Under the building, the demolition building, it was, I forget how many days. And then under vehicles and all things sitting around, it was 7 days. So there is time frames built in.
She wants to know how long can something sit there before it's cited?
7 days or 10 days, or after it's cited, or before it's cited. Upon discovery and you get cited, I guess if nobody sees it for a month, it's going to sit there.
Okay, if you don't put tags in your vehicle within 7 days, you get cited?
No.
10 days, no?
I think you have to be...
If you're driving it, you might.
Well, yeah.
No, I mean if it's sitting there in your yard, because that it does not have valid license plates or tags on it. If it doesn't have a license plate for 10 days, is that what you're telling me, or a tag?
No, ma'am, I'm saying from the time that it is cited by a police officer or the building inspector has been noticed, they have this length of time to correct it. But there's no time frame up to the point it's discovered. I mean, it's just upon discovery.
Okay.
Mr. DeVito.
We may discover things later on, and that's why we can always amend the laws at a later date. I mean, this is a good attempt at addressing the issues.
But let's just cover it. If somebody gets a ticket because they didn't put a license plate on their car for 2 weeks and the neighbor doesn't like them anyhow and decides to complain.
Well, at this point, these discussions should have been germane after the first reading before we amended it.
Well, I didn't. Okay, then I didn't have one that was worded this way to read. Okay, I'm just.
Still a second and third reading between now and the time it's finalized. This is not actually a second read.
Yes, it is.
Okay, you're going to call this a second read, okay? Because it wasn't presented as that. It said a reread. Yeah.
Is this really a second reading because we made so many amendments to it? Or
version.
If you're going to say that there are so many amendments that it's not the same document as previous, then it would have to be given a new ordinance number. It was not, so I would assume this is a second read.
Okay. Okay, well then that's all I have.
Anybody else? Okay. Motion to approve on second read. We have a second by Mr. Purkeypile. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Done. Mr. Schneider.
Make a motion for a 10-minute break.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 10 minutes. Put us back here at
Yeah.
10 till.
10 minutes.
Give or take. The session will be back in order. We were at number 5, discussion of collapsed parking lot by the auditorium.
Move to discuss.
Second.
Okay, I'm going to make this quick because I think I've got some old photographs here from an engineering assessment and survey that shows the blocks of the top of the cave, the drainage ditch, the storm sewer. And I need to know where that is because I went out and looked at, I said I'd come to this table and have a quick answer for you. It's kind of an order of magnitude cost on bridging over it with a reinforced concrete slab. Well, that was before I went out this afternoon and took a look at it. There is a 3-foot by 3-foot opening, a graded opening, a drainage opening right in the middle of those two lots. So I don't see that in this photograph here. I understand that there's going to be another foray under the building to look at certain aspects of the auditorium, and I suggest that I do that or attend that. And that I think that's going to be pretty telling because it'll tell us really, are those lots actually impacted? Because I don't see in this photograph here, that's for the camera and then for the council, I don't see any daylight here
Right.
that would show that there was that opening, anywhere near it. Now, it could be behind it. It may be further on up. But I want to make sure I know where this is. So, if we've got these closed inappropriately, that's one thing. I just want to see the extent of it. But having said all that, look out there. There's 2 lots that are 20 feet wide. If you extend from the concrete curb back 20 feet, you could have a 20 by 20 square, which is about appropriate to prevent cracking and everything. You line it with a footing, reinforced concrete footing. With this additional box drop inlet, you probably have to do a little bit more work on it. But I came up with a number between $4,000 and $5,000, to do that. And that includes cutting the asphalt and digging everything out, laying your rebar and pouring your concrete in there. So effectively, you would bridge over this area and in such a way that you still have a lot of bearing capacity with all the rocky fill material on each side of this center line of this storm drain. So until I have more definitive information about where it's located, I'd like to just table this discussion until I come back to the table and give you guys a little better update.
Okay.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Moves us on to number 6, discussion of increased water, sewer, and rates. Water and sewer rates. Yeah.
Move to table that item to our next agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, postponed. Brings us to number 7, discussion of ordinance 2204, reclaiming portion of Sweeney Alley, 3rd reading. Mr. DeVito.
Move to suspend the rules and place ordinance number 2204 on its 3rd reading by title only.
Second.
Okay, stand by.
Ms. Seller?
Yes.
Mr. DeVito?
Yes.
Mr. Purkeypile?
Yes.
Ms. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. McClung?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
6-0. Ordinance number 2204. An ordinance authorizing the City Council pursuant to Chapter 12.08.01E of the Municipal Code of the City of Eureka Springs, Arkansas, to reclaim jurisdiction over certain property commonly known as a part of Sweeney Alley.
Mr. DeVito.
Move to approve ordinance number 2204 on its third reading.
Second.
Yes, stand by.
Mr. McClung,
Yes.
Mr. Purkeypile,
Yes.
Mr. DeVito,
Yes.
Ms. Eller,
Yes.
Ms. Schneider,
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
6-0.
Okay. Thank you. And, let's see. Brings us on to discussion of number 8, ordinance 2205, removing animals from C3 prohibitions, third read.
Move to discuss.
Second.
Floor is open, discussion, Mr. DeVito.
I would move to suspend the rules and place ordinance number 2205 on its third reading by title only.
Second. Stand by.
Mr. Purkeypile,
Yes.
Ms. Eller,
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. McClung,
Yes.
Mr. DeVito,
Yes.
Ms. Schneider,
Yes.
6-0. Ordinance 2205, an ordinance removing the word animals from the list of elements prohibited for use in the performance of business in C3 quiet use commercial zones.
Discussion, Mr. DeVito.
Move to approve ordinance number 2205 on its third reading.
Second.
Stand by. Third read, roll call vote.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Eller,
Yes.
Ms. Schneider,
Yes.
Mr. DeVito,
Yes.
Mr. Purkeypile,
Yes.
Mr. McClung,
Yes.
6-0.
Thank you. Okay, moves us on to number 9, discussion of ordinance increasing parking rates for special events.
Motion to discuss.
Second.
Floor is open. Ms. Snyder.
Looking over the paperwork on that, there is no designation whatsoever for nonprofit events. I know we talked about it, all of a sudden it seems to be gone. Yes, we need to increase the parking rate on, when they're renting the parking lots, but when you have a nonprofit event, we should not be charging them. And even though the mayor's assistant is doing an awesome job in regards to how much space you're given, yada, yada, we need to have something in writing. So nonprofits are not charged $9 a day per spot. Kind of defeats the whole purpose of nonprofit, seeing as these are usually for our local charities and whatnot.
Mr. DeVito.
With all due respect, nonprofits is a very large umbrella that a lot of organizations function under, where staff, officers are paid. So I really don't see that distinction. The Bank of Eureka has a great thing for the nonprofits and the local ones to provide income for them. If we start opening this up to all nonprofits, it's by definition they may be nonprofit, but that money can be used to pay salaries to officers, and is often the case in some nonprofits, so I'm not in favor of any exemption to nonprofits.
Ms. Hill.
Your nonprofit organizations include the Blues Festival, probably the Antique Automobile Association. I mean, just about anybody who has a meeting gets a 501c3 or C4 these days. And yeah, I can't see excluding these people. You're excluding everybody. I can't imagine anybody not having a 501.
Ms. Snyder, go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Attorney, is it, okay, you're zoned. Would it be legal without repercussion to list, just like we make a list of grandfathered in things and stuff like that, would it be feasible to make a list of the events that we choose as a city to not charge a fee to? So we could limit it to the antique car show, the blues festival, whatever, with those two things, just naming just those two things, don't make any money off this, and they bring an awful lot of money into town.
I think you would be inviting trouble if you did so, because you would be discriminating potentially against all others.
That's what I was afraid of. But is there some way we could get around that?
I think you're running afoul of the problem of defining what is or isn't a real nonprofit. And as
Well, we don't
already
have that.
said, it, most organizations run as a nonprofit, whether it's really
Well, can we delete the word nonprofit and just say, we as the city, recognizing these events that bring so many tourism dollars in, choose to not charge?
you would have to have more than that to distinguish them. You'd have to have a rational basis that a court could find that those particular events were so different that they could be treated differently. And to come up with that definition is probably not feasible.
Okay, in that case, I would like to see an amendment in the price. Right now, it's at what, $3? We want to up it to $9, which is the paid time during the day. I would like to see that compromised out to $5 a day per spot.
Purkeypile?
I'd like to counter that offer and raise the ante and make that 6 hours a day, or $6 a day per spot,
Okay.
which seems a reasonable medium point, you know.
I'd go along with that.
More discussion? Is that a motion, Mr.?
I'm making a motion that we...
Well, I'm making a counter motion.
Okay, well, I'll go along with your 6, whatever.
I'd like to make a motion that
Okay.
we make that $6 instead of
And I will
$9
second that motion.
per day.
More discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, $6 an hour. Or space, sorry.
I have another, are we going to limit the number of spaces? Are we going to put it in writing, the number of spaces an event can possibly rent? I know that Ms. Wilkerson does this, arbitrarily, but do we need to have this in writing in case we run into any problems with it?
Well, go ahead.
Mayor?
I was just going to say, and Diane backed me up on this, that we don't regulate it. They can come in here and take as many as available without any restrictions on it. Then it's pretty much, we don't have any say-so in the matter. And they're not always used. Yeah,
That's the problem.
yeah.
We do have say-so.
Oh, yeah,
I've turned it down this past year.
okay.
And they,
Okay.
Mayor, could we have Diane Wilkinson?
Yeah, come on.
yeah. We've, past year with requests for all the parking spaces, I've already turned down several groups, and I explained to them why. And I explained to them last year they weren't used, basically, and they didn't have any issues with it at all. And unless I'm wrong, I think we do have the right to, advocate
do.
how many spaces we rent out.
Yes,
We
we
don't
do.
have to rent them a space, unless I'm wrong.
Okay.
But like I said, when I explained it to the special event people, when they want to rent it, they actually appreciated the feedback, saying, I looked at it last year, you rented all these spaces, maybe 20 were filled, and so they're like, oh, and I usually tend to have them, they seem very happy with taking the courthouse area. I'm not renting it over by Basin, Bath Park House. and
Okay,
stuff.
what
And
I
they
had
seem
in
happy
mind
with
was
it.
giving you some backup.
I'm sorry?
What I had in mind was giving you some backup.
So far,
you
there
can
has
say
not
it's
been
not
an issue.
me.
Yeah, so far has not been an issue, and I
Okay.
don't think we should look at it unless it becomes an issue.
Okay.
And last year, I think we only had maybe 7 events. I'd have to look at my notes that rented out all of them anyway. But so far, everybody seems to be happy and content with that.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay. So we have established the rate has gone up to $6 a day per space. Mr. Purkeypile.
Yes, do we have an ordinance? I don't see a number here.
We have an
Oh,
ordinance called
2189.
2189, but I don't
It'll have to be revised.
Yeah.
I just did put 6 every place there was 9.
It's amended.
Do we have to start rereading it again, like first time reading, or what?
Any amendments we make to it, yeah, then we'll have to address it.
I don't know.
Have we passed a reading on it?
Yes.
We did.
We have?
Did you get the historical recap today?
Oh, yeah, but I forgot what you said.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes, been going on since August of last year, but this would be the, well, now, I believe it would be the second reading, but since it's amended.
It's only one word, though, instead of half a page.
That's true.
I would make a motion to, gosh, read ordinance number, what's the number?
2189.
2189 as amended, or place it on its second reading as amended, ordinance 2189. Place ordinance 2189 on its second reading as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Apparently that was unanimous. Any against?
whatever.
Okay. Then 6-0. All right. We'll read it as amended.
Ordinance number 2189 revised. An ordinance amending Chapter 8.48 of the Municipal Code pertaining to parking for the City of Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Whereas the City Council of Eureka Springs, Arkansas has determined that it is in the best interest of the city to permit the daily rental of the city's parking lots for $6 per space per day for events, festivals, or city-approved activities authorized by a special event permit. Now therefore be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Eureka Springs that Chapter 8.48 of the Eureka Springs Municipal Code is hereby amended by adding Section 8.48.10 as follows. Section 1, Chapter 8.48.10, Use of City Parking Lots. Up to 50 spaces in the courthouse parking lot and up to 36 spaces in the bathhouse parking lot will be available for use at the rate of $6 per space per day for any event, festival, or city-approved activity authorized by a special event permit. Section 2, all ordinances, resolutions, and parts thereof in conflict with this ordinance are hereby repealed to the extent of such conflict. In the event any one or more of the provisions contained in this ordinance shall for any reason be held by a court of competent jurisdiction to be invalid, illegal, or unenforceable in any respect, such invalidity, illegality, or unenforceability shall not affect the remaining provisions of this ordinance, and this ordinance shall be construed as if invalid, illegal, or unenforceable provision or provisions has never been contained herein.
I move to approve ordinance 2189 on its second reading as revised.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Second reading is approved. Okay.
A year.
Moves us on to number 10, discussion of courthouse lease. Motion to discuss.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Floor is open. Go ahead.
I'd like to put this off until the next meeting. please.
Second.
Oh, got that one.
Table to next meeting.
Yeah, whichever. I
All
will
in
put
favor,
these words
say aye.
mixed up.
Aye.
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 That was almost musical.
Well done.
Mouse music.
Council around.
All right, that moves us into new business. Number one new business is workshop with Council and Hospital Commission to discuss healthcare in Eureka Springs, set workshop date.
Motion to discuss.
Second.
Floor is open. Mr. Mitchell.
Since Mr. DeVito is going to be touring somewhere, and this was an issue that he has input and concerns about, not speaking for him, and I do too, would it be possible that we look at setting a date in May upon his return to town? That would give the hospital commission time, and also there was a request that the fire chief would like to be able to be included in that. So sometime in May.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
Second.
Second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Number two. Yes.
Are you going to set a date?
Oh, could we ask the mayor that he would, I guess was set, yeah. Well, since this has to be coordinated with so many people, would it be possible to beg Diane to do this?
She says no.
No? Okay.
Thank you, Diane.
She
Let
said
me
yes.
let me throw something out here. Would it not be easier just to coordinate with the hospital commission on their meeting date,
Yes.
Which is when?
which would be, I think it's the third Monday at 1 o'clock at 19th of May at 1 o'clock at Echo Clinic. They'll all be there. It's easier for you to come to them and try to get them all in here. And there's
Okay.
a lot more room out there.
Well, that took care of that. Yeah, 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock.
It has press and everything, so that's all we need.
Yeah, Nikki's always there anyway, so.
Yeah.
It's not, and it's a workshop really for us.
Yeah, it's a workshop, so let me get with them and
Okay.
run it past them, okay?
May 19th.
So this is the tentative date,
May 19th.
19th.
and you'll confirm?
I'm sorry?
And you'll confirm?
Yes.
Well, Diane, you're...
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
That just seemed to be a lot easier than trying to get everybody. Okay. No further discussion on it. It moves us to number 2, discussion of dog waste ordinance proposal.
Motion to
Motion to
discuss.
discuss.
Second.
Floor is open.
Could we take some of this information that was provided by the citizen and leave it with our able attorney to come up with some wording to either add to the ordinance that's already existed about dog leashes, a sentence or something that would take care of this issue, and then just refer it back? Does it need to have a whole separate ordinance, or could it not be added into that section? And I don't remember exactly where it's at, but there's something about dogs that in the city limits you have to walk them on a leash. It would kind of make sense. It would fit in that area.
It would have to be done by an ordinance, but it could be attached to that section.
Amended.
Although what the dogs leave behind actually technically is probably already covered by our code if we wanted to enforce it that way as waste
Oh.
or as
Litter.
littering.
Oh, then, okay. Then I would,
Clerk has it.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't we have an ordinance in regards to, I dealt with Basin Park, that's when everything, didn't we do an ordinance then?
Yes, it died on the third reading.
Oh, okay. I did not
Presently,
know
the
that.
dog ordinance, it really needs reworking, and there is nothing in there about waste.
Okay.
It would be
So-
the same right now as throwing a banana peel out of your car. You're committing a crime by letting your dog leave things behind.
I'm not picking up, okay.
then it's covered.
But we do have a leash law somewhere.
Yeah, but that's separate from,
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying that that the dog poop situation is already covered by law?
It is already covered under littering. I'm one of the products of someone else's property. Sidewalk.
Or is that
Oh, so that's obviously how we're doing it.
would you advise that we publicize this sometime?
I think we did that a couple of years ago when this issue came up about dogs being walked and leaving their stuff in various places.
Brand new park.
Well, we had an ordinance,
Okay.
but it died. But just it's depending on what you're talking about, is that a fine-only offense? Does someone have the authority to arrest somebody just if we don't have an ordinance?
There is a state law that provides that littering is punishable, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, as an A-class misdemeanor in this state, which means up to $1,000 or up to a $1,500 fine. But I don't see anybody getting fined $1,500 necessarily for leaving their dog.
But you have to go to court and et cetera, with that?
If you're going to do what they're suggesting in this, they're going to have to go to court.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's not. I mean, it's not as simple as fining them $20 or $40 because they're going to end up with court costs, and then the fine, and potentially the county jail fee. The court costs on a city ordinance violation is $50. The fine would be whatever you would define it here, and then the county charges a $20 county jail fee on various offenses committed within Carroll County. So the least you would make it is probably $100 by passing a separate ordinance.
And
Right
when,
now, it's covered by either the state littering or under some of our provisions that involve littering.
and would our police then be equipped with some kind of a doggy food ticket that they write out and give to the person, or how do you arrest
It'd be
them
a uniform
then?
traffic
It's a
citation.
uniform citation, just like we would use for any other violation
Okay.
in this city.
Okay.
At your house.
You volunteer?
Yeah, that's what I was getting
Evidence
at.
rules.
Yeah.
It's a
How do
little
we
more
go about this?
complicated than what we just discussed. In Class A misdemeanor, any misdemeanor has to be observed by a party, an affidavit has to be filled out, a summons or a warrant has to be issued, or a warrant has to be served, they have their day in court, which they have a plea date, then they have a trial date, so it could be a lengthy matter over a small issue.
Until you step in it, it's small.
There again, it's not as
Maybe.
whitewashed, if you want to call it that.
And who's going to have their neighbor arrested? You know.
There again,
People have
that's
stepped in it.
something y'all will have to take in consideration if you want it to be dealt with as a viable issue of littering. Otherwise, you can make it bring up another ordinance to make it a lesser violation, just like the so-called marijuana thing that they did here for the DWI. Mr. Weaver's up on all that. Mrs. Schneider, go ahead.
Do you have any suggestions on how we could word something in regards to this? From working downtown as many eons as I have, people are really upset, locals and visitors, regardless of where they're, whether they've been walking through the historic neighborhood, whether they get out of their car, when they step in dog poop, this is not fun. Plus, then they drag it into the shops. Is there something that you could advise that we do, or say how can we do this to make people more liable to pick up after the dogs?
Well, any violation of the law, an officer has certain discretion in the attempt to ignore murder. If they consider one, that might be one way to help it with it. But any way that you ticket it, again, but you had the discussion of who wants to put signs up about open carry. How many signs do you want to put up, and what do you want to put up? Talk about dogs. Encourage you to done what it is for citizens to say, hey, tourists can come to town every block that you decide to carry. And that's your dog. Make signs.
But that's obviously increasing the problem of theft. Not only around downtown primarily, but what is feasible for us to eliminate this possible theft as a result?
We had special garbage cans and nobody used them.
See, that's why I thought we had that thing passed.
Mr. DeVito.
This is like most of our laws. It will require a complaint from a citizen, and that's how most of our laws function. Excess noise, feeding the deer, the list goes on and on. It requires a complaint from a citizen first. Police step in, and that's how most of the laws occur in this community.
If I might make a comment here, this you would also be facing the same issue with horses in a parade.
Don't we have a thing that they have to wear the diaper doohickey to carry out the
I've
show?
never seen a horse. The only thing I've seen is carriages. I'm talking about horses
Yeah.
in the parade. I don't think they do
Okay.
that. I think there's. I mean, if you're going to address animal waste in an ordinance, you might as well
Cats.
make it. Yeah, cats are not even regulated under the dog
I agree.
ordinance.
Monkeys?
So,
Moving right along.
yeah. Yeah. Anything else on this one? So right now it's just discussed. No decisions.
Why don't we ever have horses in parades anymore?
And number 3's already been
Some of
addressed.
them.
Moves us to number 4, discussion of the change in ambulance services. Motion to discuss.
Motion to discuss.
Second?
Floor is open. Mr. Mitch, you got your hand up.
This issue came as a surprise when the reporter for the newspaper called me and asked me to make a comment on it, and I said I was not aware. What was I commenting on? And the reporter said, well, let me send you the letter. So the next day I received an email with a letter from the mayor to the director of nursing at the hospital. And then after reading that, the reporter called me back and asked me for my comment. And obviously anybody that read the article would know what I commented about at that time. And I think I had two concerns. One, it was a surprise that a change that had been so long in standing from a department of the city underwent what I would have considered to be a significant change, and council didn't get a heads up or get copied CC'd on the letter. Number two, and without going into the details specifically about it, it was a concern because what is considered emergent, what's considered non-emergent, it could be ACLS or it could be basic life supports, etc. But then I got thinking, we just finished a pretty comprehensive budget for the city, and one of the departments of review was the fire department. And in that fire department review, there was concerns that we all agreed to about the EMTs and their salary structure. And we all signed off on that and agreed that the EMTs needed to be paid fairly. We didn't go into specifics. We didn't ask about turnover rates or statistics. We didn't ask to see the comparative salary scales. We went along with what the fire chief had sent in and went with that. But I think when you change a service like this, it would be nice to know the impact on the budget. We also saw in our 2013 budget there was a significant amount of overtime. I think it was somewhere around $90,000 that it ran. No, did run.
40 last year, and then they requested 90 this year.
90 this year, sorry, got it backwards. And we approved, I think we approved a huge amount of overtime. So if we're not going to have these runs and have all this overtime, I would think that we would need to see a new budget from our fire chief that is more representative of the new service.
Ms. Schneider?
Okay. I was not aware of what was going on until I heard about it. The mayor did his administration job. That's part of that seat. The money that we authorized, the increase that we authorized in the budget was for the raises and keeping people rather than train them, spend all that money and then lose them. The EMT service is emergency medical. They have contracted with the county. If they are so busy doing non-emergency transfers or transports, either one, that is when we got into massive overtime because they have to have a unit on call for an actual emergency. Part of the problem has been with an unnamed hospital in the general area who has been pushing to have our Eureka EMTs do these transfers. If we knock out these non-emergency transfers, because these are emergency personnel contracted with Carroll County to take care of emergency situations, if we knock out the non-emergency transfers, the overtime will cut down. But as soon as we have a unit out here and a unit out here, they get a call, they've got to call in on overtime another unit to be at the station for an actual emergency. This is where all the massive overtime has come in and everything else. If they do not have a unit on call because they're doing one of these transports, they will lose the contract they have with the county. And I don't have the number in front of me, but it's like somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000 a year, whatever the amount is. They would lose that because they would be in violation of their contract, which means we would have to come up with the money.
Mr. Mitchell.
After 38 years in healthcare, after running hospitals in rural areas in various places with ambulance services and with community ambulance services, it's very clear that you obviously, and I agree with you 100%, the ambulance service is there for emergency runs. So most ambulance services handle that by keeping 1 or 2 ambulances always available. They usually use an ambulance that is around that is not equipped for the emergency runs or the road runs, and they usually have an EMT or somebody, and they contain these non-emergent runs, so usually business hours, because most hospitals transfer that way. And when you take a look at the little hospital that we've got going here now, and no disrespect to them, but they're pretty much a Band-Aid station on the way to the city. They need to go to a higher level of care where they have the specialist, where they have the equipment. They're going to be getting people in there that might not be an emergent transfer, but they need to get them to a higher level of care. Those runs are compensated, I think, quite well, probably. And my point still is, I really feel that we deserve to see a new budget based on what the mayor has authorized the ambulance service to do that is more reflective of the volumes and the costs. And then that would also have been then reflective of the overall city budget, because it should be corrected.
Ms. Eller.
Okay, there's another side to this. I had a really lengthy discussion on the phone with Mr. Morris, who handles this at the fire station. We're talking about non-emergency transfers. That means somebody who needs to go over to Washington Regional for a consult, or maybe they have to go over there to have some sort of procedure done that's not an emergency. And the fire department has to respond to these things when the hospital orders them. But this can be managed better. The hospital could make an appointment, and the fire department could arrange, they could manage their time better if they picked up these people and took them over there when they had time. And generally, if they're from the hospital, they get paid if it's something that Medicare or hospitalization would pay. The next problem is that some of these are just, arranged by people not through the hospital. They just call and, want to go to the hospital, and the ambulance gets there, and the guy's standing on the front steps with his suitcase and says, "Okay, I'm ready to go." These, generally, they don't get paid for this because these are cash-only things because they're not covered by insurance, and the person could have really hired a taxi or something to do this. There are very firm laws when an ambulance goes out. It has to be equipped. You just can't use an old ambulance with no equipment and send some guy, along with them. If it's an ambulance, it's got to be equipped. He assured me, these are laws, these are regulations that they have to follow. But I asked him then, well, can't you insist that you be paid before you make the transport? Well, these people don't have the cash. And I said, well, why don't you take credit cards? And he said, well, we can't because we're not able to handle cash. And I think there's just a resistance here. I think if they would do these transfers, if the person had a credit card on hand, and you get this little thingy, and you stick it in the mobile phone, and you run it through, and it goes right directly to your bank, the bank account. Because I checked on this, and it's very simple to do. There's no cash, there's no billing. Then that would solve a lot of the problem. That you can use an ambulance, we'll drive you to the hospital if you want to, but you have to pay for it. You have to have a credit card. That would solve problems. I think what we're doing is resisting something that's part of the culture there. They don't think of themselves as being in business, so they really don't want to bother with credit cards and things. But there are ways around this. There are ways of finding and getting paid, because he told me that 90% of these things never pay their bill. None of these people, they just don't pay their bill, and it's costing a lot of money. And they have had so many calls earlier this year that they have already worked through a lot of their overtime that's allowed. They're using twice as much as they used before, because they've just been really, really busy this year. And so there are problems, but some of it is a management problem, some of it is a culture problem, and some of it is a real problem. But it can be handled. It can be worked out.
Mr. McClung, you're next.
Part of it, as far as the dollars are, is that the insurance companies, it may be an $800 charge to run the Fed bill, but the insurance may only pay $250, and so that's the problem. That's all they're going to collect is that $250, and they're, from what I understand, the new collection agency they have has got it up where it's it's in the 70th percentile on collections now, and getting better. They can't leave the station without some understanding that they're going to be able to bill for the service, and they can't provide the service. I mean, we can't do it for nothing.
That's my point too.
We cannot do it for nothing, and I also agree with David in that. What was I agreeing with you on that? I forgot.
Budget.
Yeah, it needs to be reflected in the budget. If they're going to take away that income, then that should drop an expense, and so it should reflect a budget adjustment. I think that's only fair.
Well, they have to find a way to get paid, and it's a cultural thing. Surprisingly, there are people. If you took a public poll, I discovered this when I served on a library commission in another town. Had a huge library. People paid generally $60 to $65 a year in real estate taxes to the library. And they figured that they were really entitled to a couple of books, and so they stole them, because after all, it was their tax money. I feel that there might be some people that feel, well, we pay taxes to the fire department, they work for us, so they should drive me to the hospital when I want to go, when they could just as easily take a taxi. It'd be a lot cheaper. But we need to charge what it costs. We need to do a cost analysis here and start charging what it's costing us.
Mr. Purkeypile.
Well, I kind of agree with parts and bits of what you're talking about, but it is in the mayor's purview as administrator of the city government to make these sorts of changes as they're needed. Now, we can request an update on the budget, but to question the mayor's call on this, I think, is probably out of our bailiwick a little bit. And to follow up on that, Morris, I think would you have something to add? Just lay it out and tell us kind of what happened.
Yeah, I want to
after
hear everybody's
comments.
version here first.
Okay.
So, Mr. DeVito, you're next.
We have a mid-year budget review in June that will give time to see what's involved with this. That'll give a couple of months of this trial to see what's involved in it, and that's in an orderly manner that in our mid-year budget review we look at it.
Ms. Schneider?
Yeah, okay, that's kind of along the lines of what I was going to say. An awful lot of times, okay, I'm confused, and I hope this will come up in the workshop. If the hospital doesn't have its own ambulance for transport, why not? And like I said, I don't know these backgrounds, but that's why I'm hoping that this can come up in the workshop, discussing why they don't have their own transport. I do know that they're more interested in letting our EMTs do this transporting because most of the time, no, you're not going to get paid, and they'd rather see us lose the money than them because they are a business. The big thing that I would like to say is we need to table this and make sure it's specifically put in that we discuss this with both the EMTs and the hospital at the workshop. I think that would be a good time, all of us sitting there and getting all this information, because other than you, I don't think any of us have a good enough background on hospital procedure.
Mr. Mitchell?
Let's not confuse this with the quality of the service or the dedication of the fire department. This has nothing to do with the people that work there. This has nothing to do with the service they provide, has nothing to do with the quality they provide. This is not a personal issue about that at all. This literally was a reduction in a service that had been in place for a long time that people depended upon and used. Obviously, when you change it, there is review. But you're talking about a broad category of non-emergent. That could just as easily be picking up somebody from the nursing home and taking them to the doctor's office. It's a myriad of things that were inappropriate, that never should have happened. Calling the fire department to come out and pick somebody up because they're falling at home and they can't get them up. Inappropriate. Absolutely. Abuse of the fire department. Specifically, we're talking about transfers from a hospital who has a level of care that is very significantly low as an acute hospital to a level of higher care. That's where my brain was going with this issue. And then at the same time, it was how was this going to impact the budget that we all looked at very carefully and was working on. But we will wait until June. James's idea is absolutely excellent. But again, we're talking about emergent and non-emergent and the level of care. And then the other part is we all sit here and try and work together. This council has worked very hard together, and this isn't the council of 10 or 12, and it's kind of a surprise to get a call of a significant change in service and not know it. And I'm finished.
Now, to address Mr. Purkeypile's question to me. First off, let me address the issue of comments made in the paper by a council member that were made to the paper without even consulting me, Mr. Mitchell. You never called me about this. You never said a word to me before you made the comments in the paper. That was very inappropriate. We are not obligated by contract to make the transfers from the hospital. The hospital does not pay us. The patient pays us. And like Mr. McClung said, we bill $800, we may get $200, $250. The fire chief and his personnel got together, brought up a bunch of figures saying that it was costing us money to make the BLS transfers. He formulated the letter, I read it, I agreed with it, and I signed it. The issue on the financial part of this, or the budget part, I think is kind of jumping ahead of the issue. The reason it was costing us money is because we didn't have the units to go out and make the ALS transfers, the emergency transfers, or the emergency calls. And there's another reason is that some of the issues with a hospital in an adjoining part of the county is not sufficiently staffed in their ambulance to make the calls that they need to, because when we get calls from that hospital to go to the nursing home behind them, which is within 100 yards, to make a transfer from there to the hospital, to their hospital, to tie up our unit, calls like that are just ridiculous, okay? And I told Reese to assess each one of the calls and act accordingly. That's what he did. We have been in contact with the hospital, Mr. Barriola and the DON, and several personnel that makes these, well, let me just say, we have made a couple of meetings, and in those meetings we have agreed that there could be some changes made on both sides, so it's a work in progress. I still get the mayor still gets to make those decisions as an administrative part. If I thought the council needed to know about it, I would have told you.
It's still courtesy. That's all I'll say. Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. McClung?
Just in my discussions with Chief Williams, it's a staffing problem. That's what he explained to me more than anything.
It always is.
That's right, and that staffing problem is overtime. So if there is a change like this, then it should reflect in the budget. And I went over all that with him just last week, and
You'll get a shot at that in June.
it'll be looked at.
Okay, moving on. Number 5, no ordinance draft. Motion to discuss.
Motion to discuss.
Second.
Floor is open.
You received a copy of a draft ordinance without a number that is a product that has come out of the noise committee that assembled back in the fall. That
thought I had
ordinance,
that, but I don't.
I think it got sent to you by email.
Yeah,
It
maybe
is what
we'll-
happened. If you don't have it here in the packet, we're not going to make a motion to read it tonight or nothing, so that'll be fine. But and I'll be sure that you have it. But the noise committee assembled a very diverse group, and Steve's here, and I'm going to let him talk to you about it here in just a second. Met and approached this on 3 bases. We approached it on the basis of an ordinance that was needed. Did anything need to be changed in the ordinance that was currently on the books? The issue of enforcement, and then the issue of communication, because several things wanted to happen. First of all, this looked like it was headed towards, it was only motorcycles, and they're the demons and creating all the noise, and it became very evident very quick that that was not the case, that we wanted to discuss the issue of urban noise and what it does when you live in an urban setting, specific to Eureka Springs with the limestone buildings and the canyons and all that goes with it. So we approached it on that basis. You will have a copy of a draft ordinance. Enforcement was this was shared with the mayor, and it was shared with the chief of police by a policeman and a sergeant that has been Al, that has been on the noise committee from the beginning and has been an excellent source. And then the issue of communication, there's been discussion with some of the major businesses in town and concerns that went back to the motor coach issue and how it was handled and what happened to it. One motel in particular lost 40% of their business from the loss in the motor coaches. So when you start taking on a topic like this that seems to be basically benign, it turns out, in fact, it may not be very benign at all. So the group has been very careful in the approach. And at this point, I'd like to introduce Steve Beecham and let him go over what this group did.
Thanks, David. My name is Steve Beecham, and I'd like to thank the council for being awake and putting up with this. I know I'm kind of at the tail end. I should have brought coffee, I think, with me. First of all, I want to thank David for being the council member that kind of helped head the committee, and I thought he facilitated our group meetings over almost the last 6 months very well. And we were a very diverse committee. We had 2 downtown merchants, a council member. We had several business people. We had 2 motorcycle aficionados. We had a downtown bar owner, a Eureka Springs police officer, the head of the chamber, a lawyer, as well as another business owner. And then we also had direct input from the CAPC on formulating this. And as David said, we kind of came down to really two basic things, and that was the formation of the ordinance, the enforcement of it, and then also communication. And one of the issues we haven't really resolved the communication per se. The chamber has rewritten some of their brochures. I think they've changed part of their website to try and include noise as part of the discussion. But we want, if this ordinance proceeds, we'd like for B&B owners, motel owners, to be part of this discussion with people that call them and talk to them about the issues here in town. We all know that Eureka Springs is a canyon. People probably up the street hear what I'm saying right now. Noise travels in odd ways in town. David hears things up in his neighborhood that happen on Plainer Hill. One of the issues that kind of struck us all at the very beginning was that decibel limits is not a really sound way to measure noise in Eureka Springs unless you're measuring, say, a business when you're standing right at the property line. It's hard to measure vehicular noise when you're dealing with decibel because you get a lot of reverb off the buildings. It's just, you'd almost have to have them go somewhere and measure it in a safe spot. So we basically took the state ordinance, added some of our concerns that we face as a city to it, and we've come up with an ordinance that we sort of feel like reflects a lot of the issues that Eureka Springs faces. And I hope you've all had a chance to read it. I'm going to try to be here for, however long this ordinance stays on the table, so I'll be available to at least discuss the rationale behind some of the issues that we use to put into the ordinance. But I will say that we started out as a committee probably very polarized, and not surprisingly in Eureka. We were going to write a whole new ordinance. We were not going to amend the existing ordinance. And after several hundred pages of writing and then several hundred hours of putting into this, we decided it was probably going to be the best thing to amend the existing ordinance and try to make it as simple as possible. And I'd like to just pass this around. This is just sort of a synopsis of some of the issues that we dealt with. And communication, we sort of realized that communication is something that funding-wise is going to either have to come from this table or private groups. But we just sort of wanted everybody to understand kind of what we were dealing with the idea of communication. In terms of the ordinance itself, we tried to incorporate what we were discussing, which was excessive noise, and it included both mechanical noise, which would be, lawn mowing, weed eaters, your neighbor hammering, with a jackhammer, something like that. We tried to cover issues that were not in the existing noise ordinance, which does a very good job of covering amplified noise, but doesn't really focus on motorized noise. And one of the things that was pointed out by our police officer on our committee was that we use the state ordinance when we write tickets as a city for people that are in violation of noise. And by actually having a city ordinance that does this, then basically any of the fines that come from this ordinance would stay with the city of Eureka Springs, as opposed to, I think it's like an 80-20 split or something like that if it goes to the state. So that was sort of one of the good things, I guess, if you want to say, about a fine that came out of our discussions with it. But I know y'all are all tired. I'm not going to keep you much longer. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer it. And like I say, I'm going to try to be here during the discussion phase of this ordinance as it goes on.
Just to emphasize again,
It's amazing.
Al is one that brought it up. So there's a loud muffler that's at the state that the police department here uses if they decide to write a ticket to somebody. And again, that split, most of that money went to the state. This ordinance moves it back to a city violation. So should they write a ticket, the ticket will stay within the city and go into the city coffers instead of being split. So, yes.
Schneider?
I was thoroughly impressed with the amount of work and quality of work that y'all did on this ordinance. The only problem I have is the very last section, and I had a problem with it years ago on the sound ordinance, that this is waived during special event times, because after all, if we have a noise ordinance and the loud bands aren't allowed to be really loud, then we are not tourist friendly. I have a major problem with that, mostly because of the residents who have complained about this, the people who are visiting complaining about this. I mean, you stand right down here during Blues Festival and whatever, any of our big music events, and we sound like a honky-tonk town. It's ridiculous. Other than that, I think it's fabulous. I think we need to relook at that part of it. I don't care if it's blues or jazz or any of the other stuff. Consideration reigns, and that's for locals and visitors. When I can be at my house 1 mile away from this corner and hear and understand the words, that's when I call the police station.
Mr. Purkeypile.
As much as I appreciate the humor on the second page, those are completely inappropriate.
We knew
And
that.
I hope that.
Oh, no, I like the
nothing like
bottom
that will
right.
be used.
That was just
I
to get
think-
you going.
I like
Well,
that.
humor
was
was
good.
one of
That
the
one's bad.
issues that was pointed out
That's
by
fine.
several motorcycle people, was that humor was a better approach than
I
being
hope that
kind
we
of
come up with something that is just wordage that's simple and not.
Now those are the humorous things. What we were discussing in terms of signage for the city was just noise ordinance strictly enforced.
Yeah.
That's it, the first page.
And we were actually recommending taking down the "Please Ride Quietly" signs because we felt like they targeted a specific group. And our concept here is to be noise in general as opposed to noise in, instead of pointing a finger at somebody, we just want everyone to realize that
Well, I think
that noise is an issue.
if I could continue,
I'm sorry.
I think signage like noise ordinance strictly enforced. It's like when you drive into Arkansas from Oklahoma. It's like speed limit, strictly enforced. By air. That kind of gets the old heel on the neck sort of thing, and it's really specialized in that it talks about it's really for motorized vehicles. I mean, that's really what you're targeting with that particular aspect. I'm not real sure that having something that strict out there is very friendly either.
Well, we've had that before. I mean, those signs.
Yeah, I mean the ride or drive quietly, whatever you want to say. That was more benign. But I mean this because our noise ordinance is more inclusive. It includes a lot of nuisance noise, repetitive noise. Chipper shredders come to mind in particular. But let me ask this question too.
Ms. Schneider, I'll get to you in a second.
I'm sorry, I'm rambling
that's
on.
good.
It's just
He's
She
saying
just
put
told me
your arm
enough for no
down.
reason.
yeah. I want to give you a little exercise. Let me ask you, Steve. Did you get a consensus from this committee, this noise ordinance committee or group?
We brought this to this table based on a unanimous consensus of the group.
Everybody agreed with the general wordage.
Well, the second page is probably the least agreement that anybody had in the group. The first page, the signage and the concept of the ordinance itself was a unanimous decision by the committee. And all of those minutes are available
As was the ordinance.
for the committee. And this ordinance has gone through a big transformation from what it was, and we did our final read through with our lawyer, and everyone at the table agreed that it was ready to go to the council.
And at this time, we have one person on the committee that seems to all of a sudden have a concern, and we're working with that person. One.
But But that happened
Yeah,
after
this-
the meeting.
After the consensus and all that
But I asked at the meeting, as sort of the secretary, are we all in agreement that this is ready to go forward? And everyone was ready.
And did we have any input from police department in terms of how this could be enforced and
He sat on the
violations?
committee the whole time.
Yeah, Al Frost was.
He even
and
okay.
even drafted.
Yeah,
undrafted
he
one.
actually suggested. some
Unbelievable
changes.
input. The clarity that he brought to the table about what happens, because we're sitting over here thinking what was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
Mr. Mitchell.
Hell is good.
I have
Mr.
one
Mitchell's
comment.
been recognized, Ms. Summer.
Oh, I'll confer
I'm
to
sorry.
Ms.
I didn't realize
I'll
you
defer
weren't
to
done.
Ms. I'll defer to Ms. Zeller. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm just going to make, eventually, and probably not now, but if business gets better and the economy really does recover and people have lots of money to take vacations, you're going to have to deal with helicopter noise. And I think you can do it easily just by putting a paragraph in the beginning of this to say what you claim jurisdiction over.
They have
Not
a
only
fly
the
zone.
city limits, but an extended, like 3,000 feet up.
They
Well,
have
and
a
lived
fly
here.
zone.
I lived here when we had the helicopter tours. And,
Yeah,
and I do
they're gonna
remember-
come again.
I
We-
remember people spelling things out in their fields and on their
We
rooftops.
might as well
with
get ahead.
helicopter.
We might as well get ahead of the curve and deal with it before it happens, because sure enough, somebody's going to come to town and want to take us to court because they can't get a permit, et cetera, et cetera.
We have a no-fly zone. I forget what the footage is, but yeah.
Well, with a helicopter, they can
when
be
you're
pretty
just-
high
when
and you
you're
can still
just-
hear them.
Let's kind of
yeah,
keep it on the
okay.
discussion phase of
Okay,
the ordinance
that's
itself.
all I
as
wanna say
opposed to
about
this
it.
particular item.
I mean, I can
Schneider.
hear them when they fly over my house.
Okay, having a shop right over here, the biggest problem that the shops on all of Maine have are radio related, as in cars going by with full bass and boom, 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 and it literally rattles the window, or having it so loud. Oh my God, you wouldn't believe it down here. We don't have the canyon, but we sure hear those radios. Is it possible, if you're putting signage on the highway, obviously this is for vehicles, to have wording along the lines of vehicular noise, including radios? I know this has to be something that they can read really fast, but I'm just asking about that because I have no idea what words it would be. Other than that, I really like the idea of humor. I like the bottom right picture. Although that one is strictly on motorcycles, but it's funny.
Well, I will
But-
say when you talk about amplified noise, like boom boxes and cars and things, or where the car is basically too loud, that exists in the current ordinance. The current city ordinance actually covers that. Now, how you would...
That's what I mean. What kind of
one
fast
the
wording can
suggestions
you
that,
use?
that we had early on, I think Mr. Mitchell looked into it, was the possibility of an LED light, like a speed limit thing where
Yeah.
it says you're going 35 miles an hour. in a
Right,
20
you're
mile-
going too loud.
Well, they actually have an LED sound reader that the reader is located like 50 or 100 feet before the sign, and as you pass it, it reads your sound and projects it onto a board. And if it, just be like if it's red, you're too loud. If it's green,
That's
you're
cool.
okay.
Well, we don't allow
I mean
LED, but that's great.
I don't think that. But I don't think that would
Cool
be like
idea.
a court.
Yeah.
I don't think that would be something that would. And plus, it's not cheap. So.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. McClung.
Couldn't you have that thing like that and then have it where when it read and you were too loud, couldn't you have somebody or like a voice that said, "Turn it down! Shut up!"
I nominate Terry McClung's voice.
Yes, I would second
Let's
that.
stay on track. It's getting late. Do y'all want to discuss the ordinance anymore?
I think it's great,
I don't know if I'm-
except for that one part.
We'll
No further discussion by the council, then
bring
we
it
will
to the next one meeting.
we'll move on. Thank you, Steve.
That's it then.
Moves us to agenda setting. Mr. DeVito.
Gosh,
won't be here
note
for the
down
next
here
2 meetings.
somewhere. Oh, about the yard waste. Put that on the agenda. I won't be here. I apologize, but I think it needs to be on.
I'll second that, because I was going to put it on.
Anything else? Mr. Goodwin?
Pardon?
Anything else?
No, that's it.
Mr. McClung?
I don't think this is agenda setting, but you can decide that. It's, again, I'd mentioned about the crosswalks before, but now they're all looking pretty sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're scheduled to be painted or what the state involvement really is. You
That's what
mentioned
we're
that
trying to
me
address with
before.
the state, to get them to come in and tell us that one's legal, that one's not legal. No way that one's legal. And that's where we're at right now with them. Since it's their highway, they get to say what we put on it. Just like they came in and
If
used
they
it.
don't come in and paint them, we paint them. I assume that.
If they're legal, we'll try to take care of them. But that's what we have to establish first. They're telling us some of them are not.
We could accidentally paint illegal crosswalks.
And promise never to do it again.
Holy moly.
Not like they're used anyway.
Anything else?
No.
Mr. Mitchell?
No.
Mr. Purkeypile?
No.
Schneider?
James did mine.
Ms. Ellie?
I don't have anything.
Council comments. Mr. DeVito?
No comment.
Mr. McClung?
No comment.
Mr. Mitchell?
No comment.
And Mr. Purkeypile?
I have some comments.
Go for it.
Okay, here's the deal. Public Works, I just want to give you an update. They're currently working on finishing up the sewer line replacement on 1 Street. They're also, and I met with Dwayne Allen today, he's working on improving some drainage issues over at German Alley and Cliff Street, and we discussed some ideas there in coordination with both landowners. One was not there, but one landowner was there. Black Bass Dam, donations are greatly appreciated, and let's keep them coming in because we need to hire an engineering firm to do a little plans and specifications so we can not let this languish. It does languish. It's out of sight, out of mind. And I'd like to welcome spring.
Hey, don't push it. It's going to be down to 20 tomorrow night.
You really did it. You said it out loud.
10 feet of snow
Is
coming.
that it?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Snyder?
First of all, I would like to say my husband and I celebrated our 31st wedding anniversary on St. Patrick's Day at a VIP party with Jim Belushi and the Mountain Man. It was awesome, and this was done through the Governor's Conference. Some things are worth it. Okay, that's the happy stuff. I got to say, I'm really perturbed with a lot of what's all of a sudden it seems like going on in this council. When it comes to the reclamation of the land with between the Bricks and the other group and everybody else, rather than take time and maybe spend a little bit of money to make sure everything is right and proper and assured, and just hurry up and get it done even though it's been a year, seems to me to be wrong. You need to cover your bases, you need to research, you need to get experts working on it, and as long as this council refuses to let experts at least give their expert opinion, I will not vote yes or no, because I will not be a part of this city very possibly being sued or hurt because y'all didn't want to take the time. That being said, I will now segue into the Susie Allen situation, of which the mayor and I were not here. I understand toward immunity, I understand setting precedents, so on and so forth. When someone's property is damaged and hurt and they go to expense because our main broke, because our city lines broke, and we say, to you, that sucks. I am highly disappointed in every single one of you who did not take the effort or the move or whatever you want to call it to see to it that this woman had her money refunded to her after going through this twice from the same place and location. That's ridiculous.
Ms. Eller? All I have is a list of events coming up. March 29th, Zombie Tag at Lake Leatherwood. March 30th, Classic Movie Night at Auditorium, 7 p.m. April the 4th through the 6th, Bringing Diversity. April 6th, Society Tea at the Crescent. April 11th through the 13th, UFO Conference. April the 12th, Music in Basin Spring Park. April the 12th, Second Saturday Stroll. I have no further. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Well, kids, see y'all.